And welcome in to Fifth Avenue Faceoff. Hi, how are you? I'm Chris Mack, your host. If you're watching on the 93.7 The Fan YouTube page, thank you for doing so. If you're listening, that's good too. Inside your Odyssey app or however you get your podcasts. The Odyssey app, though, free. I should tell you, you can download it now, AUDACY, and take this with you wherever you're going. This one, an instant post-game reaction to the Pens' overtime win against the LA Kings out in California, sweeping their 3-game trek through California for the first time in, I'm doing math right here in front of you, 26 years? What? Yeah, since the 96-97 season. Last time the Penguins swept a 3-game trip through the state of California. They do it at what may have been the most necessary point in those past 26 years, or at least one of the most necessary points of the past 26 years. And they did it. Well, we'll get to that in just a second on how they did it. Also, today's podcast, Mark Forward. And you say, that name rings a bell. Who is that? Mark Forward, aka Coach from Letterkenny. If you are a if you're a Penguins fan, you're most likely a hockey fan, right? Yeah, you're not just a Penguins fan, you're a hockey fan. And if you're a hockey fan, then there's a good chance you've heard of Letterkenny, the legendary Canadian show that is now getting ready to launch in about a month now, about 6 weeks from now, its 12th and final season north of the border. And there's a good chance if you've ever watched Letterkenny, you know exactly who Mark Forward is. Letterkenny Live with Mark Forward headlining a night of stand-up coming to Stage AE on the North Shore of Pittsburgh, Thanksgiving weekend, Saturday, November 25th. So we'll talk to Mark about landing the role of coach, his stand-up, the origin story or inspiration for the character, and just what it's like working with the team on Letterkenny. Again, if you're familiar with the show, then you understand the uniqueness of it and of its characters and its dialogue. But one of the funniest shows on television. And excited to have Mark on the show to talk about, well, his show in Pittsburgh coming up at the end of the month. But let's start with the Pens beating the Kings tonight and how they did it. Obviously, once again, Sidney Crosby, Jake Gensel, Bryan Rust serving as the engine for this thing. And it looked early on, I'll be honest with you, like it might be one of those nights where perhaps a large fire had been lit under the rear end of Mr. Malkin, right? He gets into it early. There's a scrum in the first period that involves Chris Letang and Adrian Kempe getting into it. As everybody comes together, like 4-year-olds around a soccer ball, a clump of humanity, fists start to fly a little bit, and one catches Evgeny Malkin right on the schnozola from Adrian Kempe after he'd been getting into it with Chris Letang primarily. Led to a power play opportunity for the Penguins that they weren't able to do anything with. But more importantly, it looked like it was going to light a fire under Evgeny Malkin. It didn't ultimately. And it actually didn't do much for the second line as a whole. The second line, I thought, was fairly disjointed tonight for long stretches of play, if not the entire game. But the first line, my friends, came to play. Sidney Crosby getting the first goal of the night. Jake Gensel getting a quick one early in the third on what was an incredible setup by Sidney Crosby, but which honestly was born, the origin of that Jake Gensel goal, Erik Karlsson flying through the neutral zone at breakneck speed, causing everybody in a Kings jersey to kind of back off and give a bunch of space to everybody else on the ice. And guess what Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel did with that space? What Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel usually do with space. Ridiculous pass again from Sidney Crosby. Great finish from Jake Gensel. That's what gave them the lead. They cough up the lead 6 minutes later. We end up going to overtime. And Bryan Rust scores the game-winning goal. What? Offsides. Offsides. But then Bryan Rust scores the game-winning goal. This one counts? Yeah? Yep. Okay, this one counts. And the Penguins win 4-3 in LA. Really was about that top line. They played stellar hockey all night and really were one of the few lines that you felt comfortable with on the ice throughout the night. Like I said, the second line was disjointed for much of, if not the entire night. The third line, not so hot at times. Redeems a Hornet, didn't have a great game. Lars Eller with a shorty, though, right? Okay, I like that. Fourth line with Jeff Carter back in the lineup. Okay, interesting. I thought actually did play pretty well. Low event hockey for the fourth line, which is saying something against a Kings team that at times was skating at such a pace that they made it look as if the Penguins were standing still in the neutral zone. They did. There were times where there were 3 speeds being displayed on the ice. The fastest speed was Adrian Kempe, who just was absolutely flying tonight for the Kings. The second gear was, well, the rest of the Kings roster. And the third gear was the Penguins roster. Tonight was a night where their speed or lack thereof in many instances was on display a lot. Again, Erik Karlsson helped even that out just a bit, specifically on the Gensel goal early in the third period. But there were lots of times where you went, wow, they're a lot faster than our guys. And here's the thing. The Penguins did get marginally quicker this offseason. They ain't getting any younger, but they got marginally quicker. Those margins weren't on display tonight. They got fairly manhandled in shots as well. Final tally on the shot clock. Kings 36, Penguins 20, including the first half, really, the entire first half of the second period when the Kings were absolutely peppering Magnus Hellberg. And that's the second big story of the night, for me anyway. The first goal that he gave up wasn't the prettiest. But I'll say this. Hellberg kept him in this game for large portions of it, especially that first half of the second period. Magnus Hellberg played a hell of a game in LA tonight. And for whatever length of time it takes Tristan Jarry to get back to 100%, you hope it's not a long time. You hope it's not concussion related. You hope it's just, hey, there's some swelling around his eye that needs to go down. We want to make sure he's all good. All that kind of stuff. For as long as that takes, I want to get this look at Magnus Hellberg because I'll be honest, in the NHL, more often than not, teams don't, I shouldn't say more often than not, a good percentage of the time, teams will find a goaltender that can carry them for a while by accident. It's happened to everybody at some point in the NHL. They find their goaltender by accident. And I'm not here to suggest after a little more than one game's worth of play that Magnus Hellberg is better than Tristan Jarry or is the future of goaltending in Pittsburgh or anything like that. All I'm saying is lots of teams in the NHL stumble into a goaltender. and they don't plan for it to happen that way at all. This would be that kind of story. And I'm not trying to shove an injured Tristan Jarry out the side door. Not what I'm trying to do. But at the very least, I'm not going to hate getting an extended look at Magnus Hellberg if he continues to play like he did tonight. And quite frankly, like he did when he came in Tuesday night against the Ducks. Ironically enough, on a night Louis Domingue won a game for the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, a backup goaltender who none of us knew existed or had very little idea about a month ago, 2 months ago, came in and won a huge game for the Penguins. And Magnus Hellberg is probably the biggest surprise of this game for me, because the first line dominating play, or not dominating play, but coming up as big as they did. Gensel, Crosby, and Rust scoring 3 of the Penguins' 4 goals tonight. That is not especially astounding, right? Hellberg coming up as big as he did, I won't use the word astounding, but sure as hell is pleasantly surprising as you can get, right? So let's see if they can continue it now. And we'll get into that in a minute, because I want to, it's always worth, once you've gone through a stretch of the schedule and you feel good about the way it's gone, and you have to feel pretty good about the fact that they're back to 500 now. They're out of the Metro basement. Lots of baby steps in the right direction over the last week or so. You also have to detach yourself from that and take a look ahead. And I sat here and I bemoaned the November schedule for the last couple of weeks and told you what was waiting for them once they got through that little stretch there of Anaheim, San Jose, a bunch of soft spots. We've now launched in to that difficult stretch. We'll go over it again and talk about what's necessary over the next couple of weeks. Remember, Thanksgiving, like a line in the sand, a line of demarcation telling you, if you're not one of the teams in playoff position come Thanksgiving, there's a good chance, like a 75% chance, that you won't be, at least during the salary cap era, a playoff team once April rolls around. Again, get into that in a couple of minutes. But a great job by Crosby, Gensel, Rust. I thought another really solid game by Chris Letang. I know the Kings outshot the Penguins to a great deal, but I thought Chris Letang had a great road trip and is really starting to hone in on that second pairing role, not having to be counted on as the offensive catalyst all the time. There's a sideline for you, or a secondary story. Magnus Hellberg, the big one for me. Before we take a look ahead and talk about what the impact is of sweeping this California road trip as they look ahead to the rest of the month, to at least Thanksgiving, and we'll work our way out through the rest of the month and then maybe beyond into what awaits in early December. Let's have some fun. Let's talk about the lighter side of things, if we can. Mark Forward, this one of the stars, I should say, of Letterkenny, plays coach. Again, if you are a hockey fan, then you know the show Letterkenny most likely. If you don't know Letterkenny, go look it up. It's on Hulu. It's hilarious. Easily bingeable, like 22-minute episodes that you'll absolutely love if you love hockey. There are a bunch of different characters that I think you'll either identify with or say, I know that guy or that girl. But let's bring them in now to talk about Letterkenny Live, which will be at Stage AE Saturday, November 25th. And lucky enough to be joined by, he doesn't look as familiar when he's not flipping garbage cans and telling me what a fucking embarrassment I am. It's Mark Forward, otherwise known as Coach from Letterkenny. If you're a Penguins fan, there's a good chance you're a hockey fan in general. And if you're a hockey fan, and you have not seen Letterkenny or its spinoff Shoresy, then I implore you to go to Hulu and find the episodes now, as Letterkenny's final season is going to be upon us in a little more than a month. Mark, thanks for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Let me thank you also for bringing yourself to the States. This is happening November 25th.
I know. Isn't this crazy? I still can't believe it.
It's awesome. It's Letterkenny presents a night of stand-up with Mark Forward, Jeff McHenry, Olivia Stadler, and Allie Pierce. Olivia and Allie, both writers on Letterkenny and Shoresy. You guys are going to be at Stage AE on the North Shore Saturday, November 25th, which is Thanksgiving weekend, which means, well, all the turkey will be gone at that point, Mark. I hate to break it to you.
Well, here's the thing. You'll just be at the point where you don't want to see your family anymore. And so you'll say, hey, let's go see that show.
You'll have had enough. Absolutely. That's a good point. It's a good excuse to say, oh, you're doing the Thanksgiving things on Saturday night. Nope, sorry, can't make it. Got tickets for this big show.
It is. Yeah, I never even thought of it that way too. It's a great out.
Yeah, that's a good. Very, you're quick on your feet. That's why I love you. Let me ask you this. So, obviously, for those that don't know, you grew up in Ontario, not far from Toronto, on the outskirts of Toronto. Do you come, like, it seems like it's like stock issued when you're born in Ontario, or really Canada as a whole, that you've got to have some kind of story of growing up, when you first learned to skate, and then playing hockey as a kid. And then I imagine you're drawing on somebody somewhere for the character of Coach, even though it's written for you. I mean, nobody plays it quite over the top. Again, if you haven't seen the show, you have to go check it out, as Mark does with Coach. So where's the inspiration for all of this? And when you first heard about it, what drew you to it?
Well, crazy thing was, it wasn't supposed to be me. It was supposed to be another actor who ended up not being able. This dog today is driving me nuts.
Oh, look at him.
Who
I can't say no to that face.
Just won't leave me alone for some reason. Okay, but you have to be down a bit. Okay, so yeah, they had another actor. I believe it was a former player. I should know the backstory if I'm going to tell the story, but it was about a week and a half before. Jacob, the director, who also plays Glenn, had worked with me on another TV show, so he suggested me. So I showed up, not knowing anything, and never. I usually love an audition because then when you show up, you've already shown them what you're going to do. So when you just get a role, which is great, don't get me wrong, you have no idea if what you're going to do on action is what they want. But luckily it worked out. Yeah, so I had no time to think about it. Just went in, gave them what I thought they were looking for, and 12 seasons later, they didn't kill me off. So yeah.
Although your lovely wife Barb never had a chance, really.
No, isn't it funny that Barb thing just exploded, and it was just an improv between me and Melanie, on the golf course, where he said something to me and I improv back, well, my wife's dead, and then she improv the line, well, she's in a better fucking place. And then from that, Jared, whenever those little things happen, he takes them and then he builds on them, and then she became this character that, oh my God, wouldn't you love to see their life before?
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of a saint was Barb? Or was she just like totally insane, like on the same level as Coach?
That's the great question. Was she insane like Coach, or did Coach go insane when she passed? Like I don't know. I don't know, but I just played him that she was everything.
I feel like there's a prequel spinoff in the works there.
I think it's already probably being written. It's going to be great.
Crave, which is the Canadian distributor of all these awesome shows, I'm sure is looking for content. Jared and he can sell them on it. I'm sure they can write it. Let me ask you though, you mentioned Jared and Jacob, and like it seems to me that the community of both TV stars and comics in Canada is so much, it's so tight. Like everybody knows everybody. And, I don't want to say you see the same people in the same shows. That's not what I mean by that. But like you see, for example, yourself in a couple of different characters in a couple of different roles. You see, like that same humor kind of circulates through all the shows. Is that a uniquely Canadian thing, you think? I mean, you see to an extent in the States and greater, worldwide entertainment, the same people show up in the same productions with their friends over and over again. But it seems so much more tight knit up there.
Yeah, well, I think because we make less, we can't take as much risk as you guys can, because you guys can just dish out TV shows left, right, and center. We're in Canada, we don't have as many people, we don't have as much money, we don't have as many people to watch it. So the selected risks, but yeah, we all kind of get to know each other, and you pick and choose from different things. I've been very, very fortunate to work as long as I have. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. We're such a huge country. We're so far apart.
Right.
Yet we are such a tight community because there's just not as many of us, I think.
But I mean, it's crazy to me how everybody seemingly, it's a very Canadian thing to sort of always have the other guy's back. Like it extends itself into the hockey ethos of, well, he may not be my favorite guy in the room, but if somebody jumps him in the corner, we're gonna have a line brawl anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that, I'm sure. Yeah.
So how have you, do you work a lot for those that want to go to the show? Do you work a lot of coach type stuff into your stand up, or how distinct should people know? Like, hey, Mark is not coach and coach is not Mark. Like, he's a different guy when he's doing his stand up.
Which I love how some people they cannot separate it. It's quite funny. But no, I've been doing stand up for 20 years before all this. So it was my thing. And I just did it a lot up here. I just didn't take it down there very much. So it's we'll of course discuss Letterkenny, and they'll be part of that, but mostly it's my 1 hour my headlining set that I've been doing lately, and it's pretty wacky and weird. And if you like Letterkenny, I think you'll enjoy the ride of this as well.
So let me circle back around to something I didn't finish a thought earlier. That's on me. Do you have any, like, did you draw on inspiration for the character of coach? Like, did you have a crazy coach, whether it was hockey or otherwise, as a kid that you were like, wow, this guy's
I had gym teachers that I drew from, that because I wasn't I'm not athletic. I never made a team. I tried out for the 4x400. That's the only team I made because 4 guys showed up, and I was terrible at it. I played a lot of road hockey and hockey on the lake, but I just wasn't good enough. So I drew from gym teachers who, in my day, were quite I want to say harder on the kids that weren't athletic.
Right.
We weren't their favorite student. So I took a bit of that, a bit of, what's that gentleman's name? Knight, who throws the chairs all over the place.
Oh, Bobby Knight. Yeah. Just passed away a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Did he pass away?
Yeah.
I can't believe he didn't have a heart attack 20 years ago.
Right.
Him and, a little Barry Melrose, a little John Tortorella. I just sort of mixed in a lot of things and then just amplified it to a
37, turned it way up. Yeah.
Way up. Popped a couple aspirins before shoot, and then we were off to the races.
So when you first, I guess the first season or so, before it really pops off and hits big, is it just like, oh yeah, I shot this fun show with this Kiso guy and his friends, and it's really, it's funny, it's hilarious, you guys should check it out. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, it blows up, and like Jay Onrate is showing up for episodes of Shoresy, and famous people are talking about Letterkenny, and all this stuff happens. At what point do you go, oh wow, people are really paying attention to this? This is taking off.
I think it was when Brad Pitt mentioned it on the red carpet. That for me was like, whoa, okay. But before that, I mean, I knew Jared had gotten a lot of, uh, it did well on YouTube before
Mhm.
the show became a show. But for me, it was just a day job. Like I thought I was just going in for the day, and that was it. So I didn't think much about it. And then he kept having me back, which was great. And yeah, I think it was when Pitt said, "I love Letterkenny on the red carpet." That was like you can't ignore.
Right.
That's a pretty big nod to, oh, it's reached a lot of people. And then when we did the tour last year in the States, it was unreal. It was just kind of like, holy smokes, this is, you feel things, but when you see 5,000 people in Dallas come out to see you, it's like,
Right.
wow, it was pretty crazy. Or getting recognized in a Houston convenience store. It was just and the thing is, you guys down there are so different with Stardom. Um, you get excited and want to be involved, and it's great. It's quite different than up here.
Well, and I'm sure people will tell me I'm wrong in the comments, but like I think Pittsburgh is somewhat
Oh, the
unique.
comments.
Oh yeah.
Ah, oh God. Okay.
I think Pittsburgh is somewhat unique, and Mario Lemieux has said this before, amongst others. The reason he felt so comfortable staying in the Pittsburgh area after he was done playing, not just because he had to chase down the franchise to get paid all the money they owed him, but the reason he felt so comfortable staying in the area was people would see him out and they wouldn't like fawn all over him and jump all over him. If he was out to dinner with his
Yeah.
wife and kids at a steakhouse, they'd be like, they'd wave and say hello, but they'd be polite and appreciate his space. And I do feel like that's a weird thing. It's a weird link that maybe Pittsburghers have in common with Canadian folk in that, like, we're going to let you be you. Like, you're still a person. Like, we're not going to tap on the cage and try to get you to dance.
But don't you find like the northern cities have that kind of, maybe it's the winters that make us a certain way. I don't know,
Maybe.
but some of the northern cities, you feel like when I'm in Pittsburgh, I'm like, this is like a Canadian city. This is like Hamilton. This is like, yeah, it's. I agree with you, uh, but still fun. Like you guys, like when you like something, you like something. Like you
Oh,
go,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna make sure you know what we like, and we
yeah.
might dance on the edge of beating you over the head with it until you tap out or you decide you like it too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's great. I wish we had it up here. We don't. We kind of go, yeah, they'll be all right. And then what Canadians do is we'll get really offended if you start liking something of ours.
Right.
We'll be like, no, that's ours, but we won't claim it till you guys like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay if you don't like it. I mean, that's all right. It's ours.
Yeah,
We'll keep it. But no. Oh, you like it now?
yeah,
Okay. Well, who the hell said you could?
yeah. We
Yeah.
get really defensive once you guys like something. That's why we're always like, oh, that actor's Canadian. By the way, that actor's Canadian. He's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, but they left Canada. So
So, and again, I hate to make this all about Pittsburgh, but hey, it's a Pittsburgh Penguins podcast.
this is
Like,
Pittsburgh Penguins podcast.
it is. So I'll do it. So Pittsburghers are the same way with people from here. So, for example, we're allowed to criticize the people from here or, even lift them up. But once you
Yeah,
recognize them, like, it's funny. I have a really good friend who grew up in a small town down in the Monongahela Valley called
yeah.
Menneson. All right. Michael
Mhm.
Moore, the boxer, was from there. Francis McDormand is from there.
Okay.
So from you've been in the TV series Fargo. She's
Yeah.
obviously in the original movie Fargo. And people they want to remind you when someone's from Pittsburgh or from their corner of Pittsburgh. So my
Right.
my one friend, he said every time he tells people he's from Menneson, they gotta be like, "Oh, Menneson, yeah, you know Francis McDormand, or Coolio, because Coolio lived in Menneson until he was like 8 years old." And he's like,
Yeah.
"No, I grew up I don't know them necessarily, but I get what you're saying. They're from here, and we want to own them. We want to wrap our arms around them, regardless of who they are. They're from here, and they made it big. Yes, they are ours. Let us remind you of that."
Yeah. Yeah. We're the exact same way. The exact same way. And
So
also, Americans are the exact same way with Canadians. If you're Canadian, they think we know each other, all of us. We all know each other.
there are 53 of you, and you
Yeah.
all know each other, and that's
We
all
all
that's
live
up
in
there.
Toronto, and Saskatchewan doesn't exist.
So when you're out on the road, you guys traveling together, what's that like? Whether it was last year's tour, you're getting ready to go out for this one, like what is it when you guys make these little observations about the differences maybe between Canadians and Americans, or maybe you see something that reminds you back home and you're like, oh, that's funny. That might actually be able. That reminds me of something we may be able to use. Because
Yeah.
the one thing I've noticed in a lot of reading about behind the scenes stuff with Letterkenny is it's very, for example, when they decided that they wanted to represent native characters, they decided they wanted to do it right. And
Yeah.
so they invited them to sort of craft their characters as to what would be most authentic.
Yeah.
Do you guys get that with your characters at all? Like when you would sit down to read a script for the following year, would it be like, hey, by the way, this is where we want to end up, almost improv like this is where we want to end up, but get there however you feel it's most authentic for your character?
Yeah, I mean, Jared's always open to input and help and ideas, and but he's also very meticulous with his wording and his do you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah,
hard show to go, hey, how about I say this, when it's such a ping pong match
right.
that he has spent so much time on. But I would, every episode I would come with something to one or two lines just to throw him off of that rhythm. I'm trying to think of like in the Christmas episode, knock knock, who's there? A big old boner in my underwear was my line that I came in with ready for because I knew I could get him.
Right.
But yeah, it's so crafted word wise that um, yeah, you can't play with it as much because it's such a tennis match.
Is
But
that hard? Is that hard though? Like because you're right. That's part of the attraction, part of the uniqueness of the show is
yeah,
that the dialogue is so quick.
yeah, there's a
And
real rhythm to it. It's hard to learn,
yeah.
especially because each line requires the line before it, so you
Mhm.
can't. I was pretty lucky that a lot of my stuff was huge monologues, but also, my God, some of the words like that Oreo rant that I had to do, where I had to name all the different kinds of Oreos and then remember all the players' names. And then he threw in on top of that all the players' sisters' names,
Right.
which weren't Lisa or Sarah or, you know what I mean? They were like Quenisha and all this stuff. So that speech was like, hold my breath. I hope I get it all out. It
Yeah.
was, I would just get the script and then I would text him and go, Jesus Christ, are you trying to, what are you
What
trying
are
to
you
do
trying
to
to
me?
do to me? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Oh
crazy.
man.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think people are excited. I have not yet talked to my aforementioned nephew about whether he has tickets or not, but I will make sure that he has his and that
Yeah,
he
please
is
do.
there Saturday, November 25th, Stage AE. Letterkenny presents a night of stand-up with Mark Forward, with Jeff McHenry, Olivia Stadler, Allie Pierce, Olivia and Allie, of course, writers on Letterkenny and Shoresy. Jeff has been on
Yeah,
Letterkenny as well. So
yeah.
more important, once we're done with this, Mark, going to the gym or going choring?
Well, I think I'm gonna take this dog for a walk because he won't leave me alone.
He's the most
Um,
comfortable thing I've ever seen in the world. He's got his eyes like, yeah, just keep
yeah,
rubbing right
yeah,
there, man,
yeah.
right there.
He just needed some love today, I guess. I might go for a bike ride, but there's 30-kilometer-hour winds, so we'll
Hmm.
maybe one direction I'll go.
Well, we will welcome you to come down this direction when you're down here stateside in a few
I
weeks.
can't wait to get to Pittsburgh. The last time we were there, I had such a fun set, so I can't wait to do the full set for everyone there.
Can't wait to see you, Mark. Thanks again for making the time today. Again, November 25th, it's the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. And as Mark said there a couple minutes ago, you're going to want to get away from your family by then anyway, right? After a couple of days of Thanksgiving and holiday festivities. So why not get away to Letterkenny Live, a stand-up show being headlined by Mark Forward, who plays Coach on Letterkenny at Stage AE. You can go to markforward.com to get tickets, or just Google Letterkenny Live Stage AE, and it'll pop right up there in your browser. And should be a heck of a show. I mean, everybody that's involved with Letterkenny, as far as I can tell, is terrifically funny. And Mark certainly, as one of the actors with one of the funnier characters on the show, tops that list. So that should be a good time. I promised before we wrapped this one up that I would start to take a look ahead. And let's do that. Let's take a look ahead, because now the Penguins, after sweeping this 3-game trip out in California, their first 3-game sweep of California since the 96-97 season. Now that they've done that, they've accomplished a couple of things. First and foremost, they've evened their record out. They're back to 500, 6-6. They're at the 12-point mark, which pulls them even with the Capitals, which is not especially impressive. It's only a point ahead of the Flyers and a point ahead of the Blue Jackets, and only 2 points ahead of the Ottawa Senators, who are now in last place in the Eastern Conference. But it pulls them out of the basement of the Metro Division, too, at least for the time being. And it also sets them up so that they're in not quite as difficult a position as we thought they may be, with the bulk of the month of November now laid out in front of them. And you'll remember, I said this before the season even started. Their first 11 games, they had 9, I thought, that were winnable. But if you wanted to be realistic, okay, let's say in your first 11 games, 14 points. They didn't come anywhere near that, did they? First 11 games, they were 5-6, just 10 points. Now, it looked like it could have been worse. Honestly, it did. After that loss at home to the Ducks, and the way they lost at home to the Ducks, you thought, this could be bad. The Saturday night in San Jose was just what the doctor ordered at just the right time. To go to California, to get these, at least 2 of these 3 opponents when you got them in San Jose and Anaheim, to win these 3 games by a composite score of 16-5. Thank you, San Jose. Has to have them feeling good, right? Coming back. To win all 3 of these when you only played 1 full game with your starting goaltender has to feel good. To still somehow come out of there with a shutout, despite that fact, has to feel good. Now, here's where, and you've heard me say this before, business picks up. They come home, they play the Sabres on Saturday night. Okay, Sabres haven't quite taken off early on this season the way some of us thought they may, but playing decent enough 500 hockey. They're 6-6-1, 13 points through 13 games on the season. Then you get a trip to Columbus. Let's see, 5 days from now. 1, 2, 3, yeah. Next Tuesday, Pens are in Columbus. Okay, Columbus playing very Columbus-y. Not a word, but I just made it one. 4-6-3, only 11 points in 13 games. A chance then to maybe stack some more points. But again, that's where business picks up. Brutal 4-game stretch, and really 6 out of 8 to wrap up the month. At home against the Devils a week from tonight. And then a Saturday night trip to Raleigh to face the Hurricanes. Devils and Canes right now, 3rd and 2nd, respectively, in the Metro Division. Then back home to take on the Vegas Golden Knights on a Sunday evening at 6 o'clock. Vegas currently best record in hockey. Well, best record in the Western Conference. Tied with the Boston Bruins for the most points in the NHL, if not the best record in hockey. Vegas 11-2-1, Boston 11-1-1. Here nor there. After that, 3 days later, the Pens then host the Rangers. A game in Buffalo on a Friday, followed by a Saturday night against the Maple Leafs. 6-5-2 right now, 14 points in 13 games, and scoring as many goals. Well, it's slowed down lately, but still one of the top goal-scoring teams in the league, even if they're now negative goal differential, which is a different story. Then a trip to Nashville on a Tuesday night after Thanksgiving, and on the final night of November, a trip to Tampa. So, again, the next 10 games, big for the Penguins. Very big. Because the hope should be that you come out of these next 10 games with at least 10 points. And that you'll look up and that at the end of the month, you're 22 games into the season and you got 22 points. That's not going to be good enough, by the way, that pace to make the playoffs. But at the very least, that should have you knocking on the door, right? Like right there, keeping pace with the wild card teams. Better outcome would be of the next 10 games, give me 12 points. So do more than just win the games you're supposed to win. Buffalo twice, Columbus, Nashville. Steal 2 more. Steal 2 more. I know, might not be easy, but you get Vegas at home. That's a possibility. Toronto, who knows, as volatile as their game can be. You get out of November. Let's move our little artificial line of demarcation from Thanksgiving to the end of November. So a week later, considering Thanksgiving is a little on the early side this year. And if you can get through the first 22 games of the season with 26 points, okay, now maybe we're talking, because now there's a chance you're in a wild card spot, and now there's a chance that your point per game pace is a little more realistic of a playoff team. That would put you on like a 96, 97 point pace. That's a wild card team, right? If not, maybe third in the Metro, depending on how things shake out. So that's your goal for the next 10 games. 14 points. It's a tall task. Again, you can't just win the games you're supposed to win. You're going to have to steal another 2. If the first line plays more often than not like it did in big moments tonight, you got a chance. If your goaltending plays more often than not like it did tonight, I don't care if it's Hellberg, if it's Blomqvist, if it's Jari, who it is, you got a chance. They got a chance to get themselves back on track by the end of the month. And that's where things, once again, if we look at this thing in 10 or 11 game segments, that's where things, once again, get interesting. I think it's 13 games in the month of December. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 13. 13 games in the month of December. And I would say 8 of them are winnable. Get 16 points in those 13 games in the month of December. 2 against the Flyers to start off the month. Coyotes at home are in there. The Canadiens are in there. Another game against the Leafs. The Sens. 2 against the Islanders. 1 against the Blues. Plenty of opportunities to stack more points in December. That might as well be next year or the year after at this rate. Way off on the horizon. Right now, keep getting decent goaltending, which Hellberg has given you. Hopefully the third line, that was just a blip on the radar tonight against the Kings. Hopefully get your fourth line to generate just the tiniest bit of offense. I'll take low event hockey from a fourth line that ends up falling more often than not, either even in the ledger or on their side rather than on the other team's side. And let's see if we can't kickstart the second line again. Riley Smith has continued to look good, but a lot of his opportunities are coming on the power play since that first week when he and Malkin were really clicking. Let's get those two clicking again and let Crosby, Gensel, and Rust be Crosby, Gensel, and Rust. And let Carlson continue to fly around with the puck. Man, we look up by the end of December, and this team is, I don't know, right there in a wild card spot. We'll feel okay, I think. But this was for a single night as the cherry on top to a road trip, winning this one against the Kings, despite getting outplayed as they were and outskated as they were for much of the night, based on some singular performances. I know Mike Sullivan might not be a huge fan of it because he'd like to see more of a total team game. But I think as a fan, you'll take it. You got goaltending and your top line showed up big. You'll take that. In early November, when you need the points, desperately need the points, you'll take that. Don't forget to follow or subscribe however you get your podcasts, including inside your free Odyssey app, AUDACY, or just tap the little notification bell if you're watching on the 93.7 The Fan YouTube page to be notified when new videos are posted, including full episodes of this right here, which is Fifth Avenue Faceoff.